Let's get into a case study because it's nice and dandy to talk about data. But what are we actually doing in the living room to build apps that are actually acquiring subscribers and boosting engagement? And so for that, I'm going to welcome to the stage Tom Smith. He's the co founder of FX Digital. Tom, coming up.
Tom, hello me. I'm one of the co-founders and creative director and chief product officer. There's too many titles. But we set up FX Digital in 2011. So this year we celebrated our 15-year anniversary. And we exist to build connected TV applications. So we started off as a traditional agency in 2000, then fell into the streaming world essentially. And we soon discovered that TV was such a difficult device to build for. There's so many years and models and so many operating systems that we realized that actually we should just focus on that. So for the last sort of 10 years, we've just really dedicated ourselves to building connected TV streaming applications for TV, for media and entertainment brands and sports brands.
And speaking of sports, we chose Dyn. For those of you who are not from the German markets, I think it's worth a quick intro. So can you tell us a bit more about Dyn?
Yeah, absolutely. So Dyn's a really exciting product, really. It's a really innovative vision. Andreas, the CEO of Dyn, he came to us and said that they'd done a lot of research into the German market, and there was around 23 million football fans, but there was a huge underserved market of sports fans for these niche sports. And so Dyn's vision really was to focus on 5 key sports, which was volleyball, handball, table tennis, hockey and basketball. We wanted to make the fans have accessible to these sports. So the problem with these sports before were they're hidden behind certain paywalls, multiple subscriptions. Some of the clubs didn't have the content as well. And so Dyn wanted to exist to create the experience that the fans could access these sports.
So let's have a quick chat around why they came to you. So you're a big screen expert. What did they need?
Well, they had an immovable deadline. So when we first spoke to them in 2022, I think it was around Christmas time when we started to kick off the project, they had to launch Dyn for the handball season, which was kicking off in August 2023. So we didn't have a huge amount of time. And so they wanted us to help build out their connected TV platform, focusing on 5 launch devices. So that was Magenta, Sky, Tizen, Amazon Fire, and Android TV. So quite a range of devices there. And they had partnered with Delta Tray to handle all their back-end services, so using Access as their content management system and their Diva player. And we also had to integrate with Usercentrics as well for their content management platform. So yeah, we started off by always with any project, technical planning, because this was a brand new product that was launching to the marketplace. We didn't have any room forever. So we had to really make sure that the build was going to be successful. So the first thing that we started off doing was a POC of the video player. It sounds silly, but with streaming, that is the first thing you have to focus on is playback. It's a live product. We're doing live games. People are paying to watch those sports. We have to make sure that the streams are stable, the quality's there, and people can access those streams. So we'll always do a proof of concept of the player. And then from that point, we build out the UI and user interface.
When you're brand new like that and you have to be in a market, how do you actually prioritize the app development in terms of which big screen ecosystem, you're going to target? Because it's a very fragmented ecosystem. So when you're in Germany, you want to be on what? Samsung, Magenta?
Yeah, that's really important. I mean, so there's obviously the big names that everyone knows, Samsung and LG and Amazon Fire. But from the market research we did, we had Samsung, Amazon Fire and Android TV were some of the bigger platforms. But actually the regional set-top boxes were a key for their growth. So focusing on Sky and Magenta. And actually there's a slide later on, but those are in their top 2 devices as well that they launched on. So we had to make sure we're on those devices. The challenge with some of those, especially the Sky devices, they're quite old. So you don't always get the performance that you need or expect from a modern day streaming service. So you have to be careful with how you're developing it. So we had to sort of turn off animations, make sure the app was robust and stable when we were building it.
And you mentioned something in the video about a sports switcher. What is that?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So we've got 5 sports. Interesting, you think most people would like to watch all those sports, but it's not the case. When they did their research with Dyn and their audiences, people were just diehard handball fans or diehard table tennis fans. So we didn't want to create an experience that was like a messy hybrid of all these different sports, because it was kind of off-putting for the user. So we created a sport switcher. So when you first launch the application, it asks what your preferred sport is, and you can say, handball, and then you're into the home of handball. So that homepage is dedicated with all of the leagues, the competitions, the live games, the replays, and just keeps you in that dedicated environment. But you can still switch out and pick another sport, but the fans really just wanted their key sport.
So on screen, that means I'm in my home of volleyball. Everything is
Exactly, yeah.
okay. Fascinating. And so you've mentioned the fact that you have to work quickly across a very fragmented ecosystem. How can you build something that works in so many different ecosystems?
All right, we'll get a bit technical. So the framework we used for this application was LightningJS. It's a web-based approach. These platforms here all have different ways of building for them. Android and Amazon Fire are Android-based devices. Now, you could build that in the native Kotlin code base, but we chose to take a web-based approach. The reason being, like I said, we had a really tight deadline, so we didn't have the luxury to build out several code bases. So we built it in Lightning, and that's a JavaScript framework, and that allowed us to deploy one code base across all of those devices. The beauty of JavaScript and LightningJS is it's built on a technology called WebGL, and WebGL uses the GPUs, the graphic processing unit, to render the UI on the screen. And that means you have a lot of parity across those devices. If you're going to build something using traditional CSS, you'll actually end up finding there's lots of discrepancies in the UI, and then you have to go in and bug fix and tweak it. And it can be quite a long-winded process to take that approach. So we had one Lightning code base, and that allowed us to have consistent rendering of the UI across all the platforms.
You do something that I thought that, once the app is ready, you just ship it, you submit it to app stores. But you said that you have a bit of a trick to, in a way, anticipate any major challenge you've had in the development. What do you do?
This is a little trade secret of ours. So there's the industry term for building products is minimal viable product, but we actually take the lens of having a certification ready product. When you submit these apps to the stores, they have a checklist that you need to make sure that they say, yes, we can launch this application and we're happy for it to be on our platform. And that's typically things like load times, making sure it loads within 3 to 5 seconds, making sure that the playback is smooth, and making sure there's no major errors or bugs in the application. So we'll basically build what we call like a skeleton app, which is making sure that we have the homepage, the app loads, playback works, and that's enough to get the app certified. So we'll push that into the stores and start warming them up. They can feed back to us if there's any issues, and we can deal with them there and then. And whilst they're kind of doing that pre-certification process, we're continuing to build out the application. Because the challenge with these stores is sometimes it can take a couple of weeks, sometimes it can take 2 months. And if you've got that immovable deadline, you can't really risk that uncertainty. So yeah, we started very early putting it into the stores, and it allowed us to have them ready. And then when we wanted to launch, we just pushed the button and we pushed it out.
And when you're live or about to be live, how do you test across so many devices? Is there a trick there too?
There is, yes. So we've got a large manual QA team in our office in London, but we have over the years also built out our automation lab. So we've basically got, does anyone here know what Dixon's is? It's an old electronics store back in the 90s, but it basically looks like a closing down Dixon's in our office. We've got every single TV you can think of. Every set-top box. We go back as far as I think about 2016, and we have all those devices in our lab, and we've built our own proprietary automation testing software. So what that does is it essentially is a vision-based testing solution, and it will take screen grabs from the designs of the Figma mock-ups that the design team create, and then it will do an image comparison with that on the actual device itself, and it will find out if there's any discrepancies within the build versus the designs. So we do that process every single night. So every night we're doing a regression of every page, every user journey, every flow. And in the morning, our QA team will get a report, and it will say what's passed and what's failed. And what's really great about that is when you're an engineer, you need to remember what bug you created in the first place. It needs to be fresh in your mind. If we were to give a developer a test report, and the bug was 2 months ago, it's really difficult for them to, think back to what may have caused that. but we get to do real-time bug reports the following day after they've deployed their code. They can see where the issue is. The manual QA can validate it, and then they can fix it there and then. So it's a really efficient way to make sure that we're keeping the code quality clean, the app's efficient as well.
All right, let's talk numbers, because at the end of the day, once this is ready, it's going live. And so I think Dine was okay to share some numbers with us.
Yes. So these are just some top level stats, but yeah, you can see like their CTV device usage. Magenta and Sky are up there. So that's why I'm saying it's important to focus on those kind of regional set-top box operators. And I have to say, since launch, we're on more platforms than this as well. So we got it out onto Wear OS, Apple TV, and LG as well. But these are the top 5 performant platforms in that market. And you'll see the big screen, 63% is where a lot of that viewing is going. Sports is long form content. So you expect to be sitting at home on the sofa. So we have to make sure that that device has a great user experience and people can access those live games on the big screen. But yeah, it's primarily live, you'll see there. And relive is basically watching replays of the content, essentially, the VOD assets of the games. And then VOD there stands for kind of the bookend bits of content as well, like post-match reviews and highlights and that kind of thing.
I was surprised. I think it's actually quite low. And, in this day and age, we've seen it. While we're in between live and VOD, is it because they're not feeding enough, not enough shoulder content, not enough highlights, maybe documentaries, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, I think Dine do a good job of it. I actually think there's probably an opportunity to help with a bit more of the onward journey flow in the user experience to help promote some of that kind of VOD content. But yeah, I mean, primarily the fans are coming there for the live games, so that's the main driver. Oh, this is a cool stat. So I told you about we had you can select your preferred sport. Actually, on the website, when you first sign up and subscribe to Dine, it will ask you what your preferred sport is on the website. It's not compulsory, but around 63% will select that preferred sport. And what we've noticed is if you have made that choice, there's 35% increase in the lifetime of that customer. So just by having that little personalization question at the beginning, we know that 35% of those users signing up are going to be there for the long term. So I think it's a nice, valuable insight into when you're doing these signups for subscription platforms. If there is a level of personalization or a bit of a data point you can capture from users, that's a really valuable data point, because then you know that you can personalize that experience from day one. Also, it gives you a good indicator that that user is going to be on the platform for a longer time. And this one here is just really showing, device usage, live watch time over monthly active user. With Dine, I think their average monthly hours is around 15 hours of watching time, and the user will come back around 10 times in that month, which is great. That's a really dedicated fan. I think as well with the sports fans, that's the sort of viewing behavior you want to see. Once they're subscribed, they're committed. They really are bought into the sport and they want to support it. And interestingly enough, I think those first 30 days when a user signs up are the most important. If you can keep that user registered on that platform for those first 30 days, there is quite a strong likelihood that they will retain. So you want to make sure that you're really kind of engaging with the user in those first month of sign up.
So you had to work in 6 months, which is very tight. What would you have done differently if you had more time?
If we had more time, so with Dine, they allow up to 2 devices at one time to stream content, and there's a bit of we've seen in the data that the viewing behavior shifts a little bit after the live game finishes, because handball and basketball, there's a lot of action that happens in the last 20 minutes, but there's also multiple games happening all at once. So a user can't necessarily absorb that. So what we find is sometimes users will watch the live game and then they'll go and rewatch like the last 20 minutes of some of the other matches that they missed. And I think there's probably an opportunity for us to build out like a multi-view experience where you can maybe watch multiple games across different tournaments all at once, so that the user doesn't have to sort of dive in and out and just capture those last 20 minutes of the other games.
Anything on analytics? Were you able to build something, strong enough and, fruitful enough to help you iterate, bring new features, etc.?
Yeah, so I mean, we primarily, most of the analytics that Dine receive are from MPOR, which is their video analytics. So it gives them real deep insight into the content that's resonating, where the drop-offs are. onward journey, all that good stuff. Also helps create these slides. But I think one thing that I would have done differently, maybe if we were doing this project again, is we had a very great collaboration with Dyn and Delta Tray at the beginning, but we didn't have much access to the BI team at Dyn, and I also think they were building it up at the time as well. But I think if we had brought the BI team into the conversations when we first started this product, we could have maybe architected the tracking of the analytics in a way that would serve them the best data points.
And you mentioned something, and I think I have the answer for you, but I live in Amsterdam. But you said that you were struggling with one TV, that when you were launching, there's one TV from 1 year from one manufacturer that you could not find.
Yeah, this was the Samsung 2021 device, I believe it was. Yeah.
Yeah, so I have that. Yeah.
Can we borrow
so
it?
I can be, or I can be your remote tester. I don't know, but we can have a chat. Well, Tom, thank you so much for today.
Thanks, everyone.